Roll represents the creation of planet Earth, dated at 4.6 billion years ago, created around the same time as the rest of our galaxy, the Milky Way. Here is not close enough for where humans are in that timescale. But today, for this movie, we are interested in the Cambrian Explosion, dated at 542 to 490 million years ago. This period marks an important point in the history of life on Earth. This is because in this period is when most major groups of animals first appeared in the fossil record. Over this 40 million period shows the biggest diversification of animals in the history of the planet.
The major biota were the Ediacarans. These soft-bodied, bottom-dwelling creatures lived on microbial mats. Below these mats, the sediment remained basically undisturbed.
The Earth was somewhat different than present at the time. The supercontinent Gondwana was moving towards the South Pole, while the smaller continents of Laurentia, Siberia and Baltica were heading towards the equator. The Ipsias Ocean was also expanding at the time. At the time, the climate was warm, dry and mild, and there was no ice caps present at the poles. Also, with high sea levels, many of the continents were flooded, creating epicontinental seas. It was in these seas where marine life thrived.
In the Cambrian, the first vertical burrows appear. These are believed to have been made by worm-like creatures. This burrowing indicates the development of musculature and was probably done for protection and feeding on organic matter in the sediments. This burrowing broke down the Ediacaran mats and oxidized the anoxic sediments, sending oxygen up to the subsurface and making the water more habitable. Some burrows suggest that there were animals at this time that possessed hard, though maybe not mineralized exoskeletons, perhaps some kind of chainmail armor.
The first mineral skeletons, Cloudina and Namacalathus, which arose in the Ediacaran, were the first of a group known as the small shelly fossils that characterise the first 10 to 12 million years of the Cambrian period. These small mineralised fossils are usually only a few millimetres or less in size and consist of parts of organisms like spicules and tubes, such as Laporthella, as well as complete creatures like Disconella or Namacalathus. The small shelly fossils represent the evolution of hard tissues and biomineralization. A lot of these small shelly fossils were made of phosphate. Calcareous skeletons would come to dominate through time. From the beginning of the Cambrian period 542 million years ago up to 530 million years ago, there was a rapid growth in the number of organisms with mineralized skeletons. Around 525 million years ago, more complex organisms began to appear in the fossil record. Calcareous, sponge-like archaeocyathids first appeared at this time. They were sessile, reef-building creatures that briefly flourished in the early Cambrian, only to disappear again shortly afterwards. As the archaeocyathids declined, they were replaced by a fauna more recognisably like today's. By the Middle Cambrian, most modern phyla were represented. Lagerstätten, like the Burgess Shale in Canada and Shenyang province in China, provide exceptionally well-preserved fossils from this period in the Cambrian. Even soft parts are preserved. This means we can get a very clear picture of life at the time. Many of these were faunal creatures like Atoya, that it is thought lived in a burrow, and polychaete worms like Canadia and Burgess akita, which look similar to these modern animals. Suspension feeders like sponges and brachiopods formed tiered communities at the time, feeding from different levels in the water column, and there were also filter-feeding organisms like Deinonychus. Mobile animals like onychophorans, which are lobopods similar to modern velvet worms, hyoliths, wiwaxiids and monoplacophorans were common during this period. But arthropods were the most abundant and appeared to sit at the top of the Cambrian food chain. Early crustaceans, ancestors of crabs and lobsters, as well as chelicerates from which arachnids like spiders and scorpions may have evolved, were part of the arthropod phylum at the time. Of the arthropods, trilobites are probably the most well-known subphylum from the Cambrian. They first appeared about 525 million years ago and were the rulers of the sea for almost 300 million years. Most modern phyla seen today evolved from the Cambrian, and the organisms seen then were the forerunners of what we see today. They occupied all available niches, and almost all modern body plants first appeared in the fossil record during the Cambrian. as well as some failed body plans or dead ends of evolution. Nothing on the same scale as the Cambrian Explosion has ever occurred since, maybe because the Cambrian Explosion filled every available niche, leaving no room for more diversification.